Anthony Joshua becomes a two-time world heavyweight champion, recapturing the IBF, WBO, and WBA belts with a lopsided 12-round unanimous points decision victory over Andy Ruiz Jr. in their rematch. Now, going into this fight, I did several videos. One of them was about the mistakes that Anthony Joshua made in the first fight, which he needs to correct to win the rematch. And I also did a video about the mistakes Andy Ruiz made in the first fight that he needs to correct for the rematch. A lot of people were focusing on the mistakes AJ made, and they weren't focusing enough on the mistakes that Ruiz made, including Ruiz himself. Now, Ruiz has always had certain flaws, which I pointed out before the fight. Contrary to what some clueless people would have you believe, Andy Ruiz has never had good head movement, at least not at long range. When he's up close and you're exchanging hooks, he can get underneath some of your shots. But at long range, Andy Ruiz has never been good at slipping jabs. He's never been good at slipping long range power shots, at least not straight shots. Never been good at that. He's always been a guy who tends to come in with his head up in the air, not bending at the waist, not getting low. Again, these are all things I pointed out pre-fight. He's always been a guy with slow feet. So he's not someone that's going to be able to rush in and cover the ground really quickly and get shots off. No. He's also never been a volume puncher. So he's not going to overwhelm you with the amount of punches he throws. That's not Andy Ruiz's game. Andy Ruiz relies on you either staying still for too long or exchanging with him. Therefore, the tactics that I felt AJ needed to employ in the rematch were to exploit Andy Ruiz's weaknesses. If a guy's got slow feet and he wants you to stand, then do the opposite. Move around and get him to do what he doesn't want to do, which is have to chase you. He doesn't want to do that. So I felt like AJ needed to move, keep everything at long range, and also fight a relatively low volume fight. Because again, Andy Ruiz is a guy who feeds off whatever you do. If you throw a lot of punches, Ruiz is going to throw a lot of punches because he's reacting. He's a front foot counter puncher. But if you're not throwing many shots, especially if you're keeping it at long range where it's difficult for him to get to you, and you're not throwing many shots, he's not going to throw many shots. This was the logic behind the tactics that I laid out pre-fight. I couldn't for the life of me understand why there was people out there, including ex-professional boxers, part of the Sky team, people like Darren Barker and Spencer Oliver. I couldn't for the life of me understand why these guys were saying AJ needed to take center ring, stick out a heavy jab and not let Ruiz push him back. They clearly didn't learn anything from the first fight. They clearly didn't learn anything about Andy Ruiz over the years in terms of what he's good at, what his strengths and weaknesses are, and how they match up with AJ's strengths and weaknesses. Because if AJ has stood in the middle of the ring, tried to take center ring and not let Ruiz push him back, he would have got knocked out again. Thankfully, AJ employed the exact tactics which I said he needed to employ before the fight. Yeah? Moving around, not staying in one place for too long, not exchanging. He did, a couple times exchange a little bit, but for the most part, he kept it relatively low volume and didn't give Andy Ruiz much to counter. Perfect tactics. Now, the questions that I had going into the fight was, could Anthony Joshua keep those tactics up for 12 rounds? I knew he could box on the back foot. Again, there were people running around saying AJ can't box on the back foot. There were demented individuals saying that Andy Ruiz is actually a better long-range boxer than AJ. I mean, what brand of crack are you smoking? It's incredible that people were so demented and deluded that they thought that Ruiz had better boxing skills than it. Where the hell did you get that from? No, Ruiz is a good front foot counterpuncher, but he has limitations. He always did have. The question for me was, could AJ keep up the tactics of exploiting those limitations for 12 rounds? I expected AJ to have to endure a crisis in the final 4 rounds of the fight. If you remember my prediction was AJ is going to be outboxing Ruiz for the first 8 or 9 rounds. But in the final 4 rounds, I think he's going to have to come for a crisis. And the reason being because I was concerned about AJ's stamina. I knew he could outbox this guy, but could he do it for the whole 12? Well, the crisis never came. AJ ticked all the boxes when it came to the stamina, ticked all the boxes when it came to mental fortitude, and he proved certain things to me tonight. And he will learn from this and he'll grow as a fighter. So in terms of how the fight played out, exactly the tactics that I alluded to. Now he didn't have his left hand down all the way through the fight. A lot of the time his hands were up. A lot of the times his hands were down too. He kind of mixed it up. Sometimes his hands were up, sometimes they were down. He didn't jab to the body as much in this fight as he did in the first fight. I think that was still a safe punch to throw at long range, the jab to the body, and it can still create distance. But hey, it's all a learning process. And as I say, for the most part, he just kept on the move, kept Ruiz off balance. Ruiz needs you to stand in one place for a certain amount of time in order for him to get set to throw his shots. Even if he wants to lead off, he needs you to stand still for long enough to allow him to lead off. He's not a Mike Tyson with really quick head movement and quick feet and getting up close. No. People were making up fantasies in their brains about what Andy Ruiz could actually do. I had one of these jokers in my Facebook group insisting that Ruiz was an expert at slipping jabs. No, he's never been. When did you start watching Andy Ruiz? Last week? He's never been an expert at that. As I say, for me, it was just, could AJ maintain the tactics for 12? Because his stamina for me was always in question. Now he's proved to me that there is no question about his stamina. Certainly not this version of AJ, who's a lot lighter. He was able to do the 12 rounds at a pretty good clip. There was a portion of the fight, I want to say around 7, 8, those kind of rounds, where AJ looked to be gassing a little bit. And I personally think there may have been a mental barrier that he had to go through. First of all, he got stopped in the 7th round last time. And he was gassed in the 7th round last time. So when the 7th round came up this time, there might have been, subliminal or psychological, subconscious things going on in his head, a subconscious barrier that he needed to break through in order to exercise the demons of what happened in the last fight. Also, something I pointed out in my pre-fight videos, Andy Ruiz is very dangerous in clinches. If you don't have hold of him properly, he will explode out of clinches and hit you with shots. He did that several times to AJ in the middle of the fight where AJ started to clinch more. And again, it looked as though AJ was tiring, which is why he was clinching more. But Ruiz punished him for clinching, or at least not clinching him tight enough. And I think it was noticeable. AJ wasn't as physically strong as he was in the first fight, because he didn't have as much muscle on him. Because in the clinches in the first fight, he was really able to, handle Ruiz, at least prior to getting hurt in the 3rd round and dropped. Prior to that, he was able to handle Ruiz in the clinches quite well. But in this fight, he wasn't able to handle him as well in the clinches. And I think the loss of muscle mass did contribute to him not being quite as physically strong. But his stamina was better, his movement was better. And he just did what he did in the first couple rounds against Ruiz in the first fight, but did it for 12. So yeah, that's what he did. And also, I think AJ was anxious of getting hit to some extent. And once Ruiz tagged him a few times in those middle rounds, I think AJ realized, that wasn't actually that bad. I can do this. And that, I think, also gave him a psychological boost. And then he got his second wind. He started being light on his feet. Him and Ruiz were talking to each other. I noticed that throughout the fight. And I can only imagine that Ruiz was telling him, stop running, stand and fight, don't be a coward, all these kind of things. Now, AJ is an aggressive-minded individual when he's in the ring. And the AJ of old would have reacted to that and said, okay, let's fight then. And gone in there and tried to punch Ruiz in the mouth. And a couple of times he did kind of do that. AJ did get greedy a few times and nearly paid the price for it. But what AJ needs to learn from this experience is when a guy is constantly goading you, talking to you, telling you, stand and fight, be a man. When he's telling you those things, that's when you're getting to him. That's when you know that your tactics are working. That's when you know that you shouldn't engage. You shouldn't give him what he wants. You should keep moving around. The more he talks to you, the more he tells you stop running, the better it is for you. Psychologically, you're winning the game. You're frustrating him. And that's what he did. He frustrated Andy Ruiz. You see, there was a tendency with AJ, even early on in this fight, he had to hold his fighting instincts back because there's a tendency to want to hurt the guy. What he needs to learn is just frustrate the guy. Don't worry about hurting everybody. There are certain guys who are so tough, you don't want to make it a goal to try and hurt them. Just frustrate them. Ruiz is that kind of guy. If you can frustrate him, after that, you might be able to hurt him without even trying. Yeah? Because when he gets frustrated, he's going to make more mistakes, going to leave more openings for you, and that's when you might be able to hurt him. But in this particular fight, he never really got the opportunity to hurt Ruiz. I think in the first round, he hit Ruiz with a right hand, which cut Ruiz's eye. And Ruiz kind of wobbled a little bit from that punch. I guess he was caught cold a little. But other than that, Ruiz wasn't noticeably hurt in the fight. AJ was maybe buzzed a few times, but nothing too bad. And he stayed disciplined, moved for 12 rounds, did his thing, got the decision, and it wasn't even close on the cards. I was 50-50. I thought AJ's either going to win on points or he's going to be ahead on the cards and get stopped late. I didn't expect him to win on the scorecards this easily, with no crises or anything like that. Quite an easy win. So definitely tick some boxes there in terms of his stamina and in terms of his mental strength, because he now knows that not only can he box under pressure for 12 rounds with a guy always coming at him, a guy jabbing him to the body and all that kind of stuff that Ruiz was doing, not only can he do that for 12 rounds, but he also knows that he can go straight back into a fight against an opponent who just knocked him out, who'd really beaten him up. Yeah, he knows he can go straight back in the ring with an opponent like that and beat them in an immediate rematch. That is going to give him a tremendous psychological boost. You know, the kind of confidence you get from experiences like that. This right here, this whole Andy Ruiz saga is definitely going to make Anthony Joshua a better fighter. Now, as far as Andy Ruiz, he came into the fight at 283 pounds. There was speculation from many that wasn't his real weight. Some people were saying he might have had weights underneath his clothes or in his pockets or in his shoes, or, you know, I jokingly said that maybe he was wearing a lead sombrero. But I think most of the people who were adamant that he wasn't really 283, because there were certain people in my Facebook group adamant that there's no way he was 283, and they were kind of mocking people who actually believed that that was his real weight. Yeah. There were people in my Facebook group mocking people for thinking that Ruiz was really 283. And I think those individuals were wishful thinking. I think those people were so desperate, and many of these were British people, by the way. They were so desperate for AJ to lose again that when they saw Ruiz come in at 283, they started getting worried. They didn't want to believe that Ruiz might actually lose. So they started trying to convince themselves and others that it was all just some mind game and ploy by Ruiz, and he's going to sucker you all in, not just AJ, but the rest of you idiots who think AJ's got a chance. This is what was going on with these individuals who were adamant. I mean, they weren't saying maybe, possibly he's got weights. No, they were saying he's definitely not 283. That's what they were saying. Wishful thinking. That's what it was. As soon as the first bell went, it was clear to everybody that Ruiz was definitely 283. He looked way bigger than the first fight. In fact, I wouldn't be surprised if he was more than 283 in the ring. He looked huge. I mean, he's always been a big fat guy, but even by his standards, he looked horrendously overweight. Now, was it just the money? Was it the Buster Douglas syndrome? Once you've made it and you've made all that cash and you no longer have to worry about paying bills, it's hard to get up and train. Yeah, there was definitely an element of that. But I actually think a bigger influence on Andy Ruiz's attitude coming into this fight was the members of the PBC Al Heyman cult and the PBC fanboys, because they were gassing Andy Ruiz's head up to a ridiculous extent. They were telling Andy Ruiz that AJ is garbage, he's trash, he's a hype job, you destroyed him in the first fight. Not only are you a better fighter up close with a better chin, with faster hands, but you're also a better boxer. Yeah, you got better boxing skills than this guy. This is what the PBC cult members were telling Ruiz day in, day out. This is what the PBC fanboys were telling Ruiz day in, day out. You had Deontay Wilder coming out publicly saying that Ruiz is going to win the rematch very, very easily. The PBC cult members, which includes fighters, you know, the Watson family, all them lot, as well as many PBC fighters, Wilder and everybody else, and the PBC fans, these individuals are so frighteningly detached from reality. It is terrifying. How on earth could they believe that AJ was just absolute trash and all hype? I saw people like Ray Mancini saying that Andy Ruiz would win very easily. No, not just so they gassed Ruiz's head up to the point where he probably felt like he didn't really need to train hard for the rematch. They made him feel like it was going to be easy. The PBC cult members, the Wilders, the Ray Mancinis, and whoever else was gassing Ruiz's head up, they are partly to blame for why Ruiz wasn't 100% in this fight. Yeah, they're partly to blame because of their idiotic attitude and their reckless disregard for reality. Totally deluded, these people. They live in their own fantasy land, not here on terra firma. And I'll have more videos for them in the coming days with regards to how totally deluded they are. Because you got some good fighters in PBC, including Wilder. And, you know, I've been defending Deontay Wilder for many years. When most boxing fans were saying Wilder was garbage, I was arguing with people saying, no, he's actually a lot better than you think he is. But now we've gone from one extreme to the other, where people have gone from thinking Wilder was garbage and me defending Wilder saying, hang on, he's not garbage, he's actually good. Now they've gone to the other extreme where they act like there's only one person in the whole division who even has a chance against Wilder, and that's Fury. They've gone from one extreme to the other. And I'm here to tell you again, you're wrong again. So I'll do a separate video about that. Wilder is not as bad as you first thought he was, as I told you all along, but he's also not as good as so many people, including in Britain, think he is now. No, you're going way overboard. He's not that good. Yeah, he's good, but he's not as good as you think he is, because there's not just Tyson Fury in the heavyweight division who can beat Deontay Wilder. There are other fighters as well. Oh, yes. Same goes for AJ. Same goes for Fury. There's not only one person who can beat Fury or one person who can beat AJ. No. The division is more stacked than you think it is. There are multiple people who can beat Wilder, multiple people who can beat Fury, multiple people who can beat AJ, beat Ruiz, beat White. Oh, yeah. This heavyweight division is wide open. And you guys are going to see it in the coming years. You are going to see that your perception is very different from reality. And Andy Ruiz discovered that tonight. He got caught up in that PBC hype bubble and paid the price. Now, even if Ruiz had come in the same weight as the last fight, he probably would have lost anyway. But he would have done better. Because look, if you carry an extra 15 or more pounds, it's going to slow you down. It's not going to help you, is it? If you won the fight last time at whatever he was, 260 something, you're coming in at 280 something, you're not going to be better. You're going to be worse. It's not going to help you. So, you know, he would have done better if he was the weight he was last time, but he probably still would have lost anyway because of the technical flaws which I outlined before the fight. Those flaws have always been there. Anybody who denied them or downplayed them was deluding themselves. Either that or they don't know what they're looking at, because those flaws were always there. And AJ picked tactics the perfect tactics to exploit those flaws. You know, I mean, you got this article here, meant to talk about this and show you this earlier, which revealed that Andy Ruiz had already agreed terms to fight Deontay Wilder before the Joshua rematch had even taken place. That shows you the level of complacency. And you think, how could a guy who just beat Anthony Joshua when Joshua was complacent then turn around and make the exact same mistake Joshua made in their rematch? Isn't that extraordinary? But that is the poison that the PBC bubble of hype, the cult members, can infect your mind with. They can so separate you from reality that you can end up underestimating a guy who just underestimated you in the previous fight and not learn from his mistakes. Yeah? Hopefully Andy Ruiz will learn not to listen to the Wilders and the PBC cult members, because these people don't know what on earth they're looking at. They're totally delusional. I'm telling you now, it's one of the most extraordinary things I've seen is the PBC cult. Now, with many fighters, you get this cultish behavior among their fans. They rally around the fighter and, they're cultishly worshiping the fighter. But with the PBC mob, it's worse. Because it's not just the fans, it's even fighters within PBC have got this cultish mentality where they're totally detached from reality. It's frightening. I've never seen anything like it before in boxing. And I've been following this sport over 30 years. Never seen anything like it. Bizarre stuff. Andy Ruiz needs to learn to detach himself from those people. I'm not saying he needs to leave PBC. I'm saying that he needs to not socialize with these people because they're clueless. And they're putting his mind in the wrong place. Yeah? As far as Anthony Joshua, he's learned lessons. What's next for him? Well, he's got mandatory obligations, of course. There's the WBO, Usyk's mandatory, and there's the IBF, Puller's mandatory for that. Most people expect him to defend the IBF first because they tend to be more strict with mandatories, but also because the WBO, if AJ relinquishes that belt or gets stripped, Usyk is a matchroom fighter as well, and there's a good chance that he may face Chisora for the vacant belt. In which case, AJ could just relinquish that belt, let Usyk and Chisora fight for it, and then he fight the winner to unify again. So that could happen. Obviously, I want to see the undisputed fight. But as I said in several videos, I suspect that Anthony Joshua and Eddie Hearn are going to avoid the Deontay Wilder fight. That's what I suspect is going to happen. Yes, they wanted the Wilder fight. I mean, you don't offer a guy millions and millions several times. I mean, they offered him, 4 different contracts to fight AJ, 3 or 4 different offers. The last offer was over 100 million. You don't do that if you don't really want to fight. So AJ and Hearn 100% wanted the Wilder fight. Anybody who says different is lying through their teeth. Either that or they're just delusional or stupid or just uninformed. So AJ and Hearn definitely wanted the Wilder fight. But the first Ruiz fight, I think, scared Eddie Hearn to death. Scared Sky to death. And probably DAZN and to some extent AJ as well. They realized how close they were to relinquishing control of the heavyweight division to Al Heyman. And I don't think they want to put themselves in that position again anytime soon. So as I've been banging on about for the past however many months, the worst decision that Deontay Wilder ever made in his whole career was turning down the Anthony Joshua fight. Deontay Wilder is a tremendous fighter, but he is a deeply ignorant, overly emotional, unintelligent hillbilly of a person who is absolutely clueless about business, certainly as it pertains to boxing. If he still can't see how that was a massive mistake, turning down the AJ fight, then there's no hope for this guy intellectually. Now, obviously, If AJ does what I'm expecting him to do, which is, avoid the Deontay Wilder fight for a while, put it off for a while. If he does that, then strap in, AJ fans, because I'm going to start going in on Anthony Joshua. There are people who get it twisted about me. They see me on the warpath, taking on a particular group of fanboys, and they think this is how it's always going to be on my channel. No. I'm not loyal to any fighter. I'm not loyal to any promoter. I'm loyal to the sport of boxing. I want to see an undisputed champion. When Wilder was avoiding the undisputed fight, which he absolutely was, I was on his case. If AJ starts avoiding the undisputed fight, strap in, AJ fans, because I'm going to be on his case just like I was on Wilder's case. Hopefully, AJ proves me wrong and doesn't start avoiding the undisputed fight. Hopefully he, continues to push for greatness, and him and Hearn continue to take the risks they've been taking throughout his career, and they go for it. And if they do, I'll be more than happy to admit I was wrong. So we'll see. Let me know what you guys think in the comment section below. Did you like Anthony Joshua's performance? Some people are going to say it was boring, that he ran, that it was negative, that he didn't stand and fight like a man. Well, those people, of course, are the ones who wanted him to lose. But if you're just looking at it from a purely objective standpoint, it wasn't an entertaining fight. The first fight was real good. This fight was relatively boring. Yeah, it was. But it's interesting that a lot of the people saying it was boring and cussing AJ for boxing safe are the very same people who are up Tyson Fury's backside all the time when he boxed safe for loads of his fights. So when Fury does it, it's a masterclass. When AJ does it, it's boring and cowardly. Ain't that funny? Even Deontay Wilder, when he fought Berman Stavern, fought a very similar fight to what AJ did against Ruiz. Very similar. But again, they're not going to give AJ credit. They're going to say, he was boring and cowardly and all this kind of stuff. But Wilder against Stavern, masterclass. So you're still going to get that. And of course, I will address that. But again, to reiterate, I'm a boxing fan, people. I stand on the side of boxing. I hold no allegiance to any fighter or any promoter or any network. The people who I criticize are the ones who are standing in the way of the best fights. The people who don't give respect where it's due. And Anthony Joshua, in 24 fights, is a 2-time world heavyweight champion, 2-time unified world heavyweight champion at that, has a better resume than any other heavyweight out there. Facts. And he needs respect for that. Maximum respect. Deontay Wilder was still fighting pig farmers when he was 24 fights deep. In fact, Deontay Wilder was still fighting mostly pig farmers when he was about 35 fights deep. Never seen a fighter with such an overrated resume in my entire life as Deontay Wilder. People, as I say, just to repeat myself, have gone from one extreme to another. I used to defend Wilder all the time because people were constantly saying he was rubbish. For years, I was defending Wilder and telling people he's much better than you think he is. And now it's gone to the other extreme where people think that nobody in the division even has a chance against Wilder other than Fury. You're making the same mistake again. You are mistaking your perception for reality. Yeah, I'll probably do a separate video about that, about how people, when you've been following boxing 30 plus years like me, you see the same patterns repeat themselves, particularly in the heavyweight division. The same patterns repeat themselves over and over again, not just in terms of what happens in fights and what happens in particular eras, but also what happens with fans. The behavior repeats itself. People never learn. Now, some people are younger boxing fans, so I can't blame them because they haven't seen all this kind of stuff happen before in previous heavyweight eras. But the older boxing fans, if you're like, late 30s and up, you really should know better than to be coming out saying, nobody can touch Wilder other than Fury. You should know better than that. There are multiple fighters in the division right now who can beat Deontay Wilder. Multiple fighters who can beat Fury, multiple fighters who can beat AJ. That's what kind of era this is. It's the Wild West. You're thinking that there's one heavyweight head and shoulders above everybody. You're wrong. And again, I'll do a separate video about this because I've been around and I've seen this all before. I've seen all the same patterns. I've seen people unable to separate perception from reality. And that's how upsets occur, when you can't separate perception from reality. Your subjective perception is not what is reality. And the subjective perception of many people is that Wilder is untouchable except for Fury. He's the only person who can give him a fight. Absolute, total and utter nonsense. Deontay Wilder lost 6 rounds against a 40-plus-year-old man who was slow as molasses. You know how many skilled fighters are out there? Good fighters? Now, I don't know down to every single person which guy has the ability to beat Wilder, but what I do know is the talent pool is big enough in the heavyweight division that Wilder will not be able to beat everybody. There are going to be several people who can beat him. And I might talk about another one who fought on this very card. One of them who could possibly beat him fought on this card. And I'm not just talking about AJ. There's somebody else fought on this card who I've been saying for a long time is going to beat at least one, possibly two, of the big heavyweights. And when I say the big heavyweights, I'm talking about the Wilders, I'm talking about the Furies, I'm talking about the AJs. Oh yeah, there was a guy who fought on this card who's going to beat at least one of them. And it might be Wilder that he beats. I'm telling you now. So anyway, plenty of material for other videos. Let me know what you guys think in the comment section below. It's Ham and I'm out. Join me on Patreon. I upload a minimum of 2 podcasts every single week, covering a wide variety of controversial topics, as well as live stream Q&A sessions. Take a look on screen right now at some of the podcasts I've produced so far. For just $3 a month, the equivalent of about £2 a month, you get access to all my new podcasts and my entire back catalogue of past podcasts, including my popular Confessions of a Nightclub Bouncer series. You can listen on your computer or on your smartphone or tablet by downloading the Patreon app from the Google Play Store or the App Store for free. The Patreon app also allows you to download each podcast in MP3. For less than the price of a cup of coffee, you get access to dozens of hours of exclusive content. It's easy to sign up, there's no contract, and you can cancel at any time. So come and join our community of free and critical thinkers by signing up with me here on Patreon today.